Good morning. Welcome to TASCTV. I am Günay Evinch, co-chair of the Turkish American National Steering Committee. And today, in the TASC Roots program, we have our special guest, Mr. Meto Koloski, who represents the Macedonian American community at United Macedonian Diaspora. Meto, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Günay. Thank you so much for having me on TASC Roots.
Thank you, sir. Meto, just to let everyone know, you and I are friends for a long time, and we've been working together at the nation's capital, and sometimes even state capitals, to bridge Turkish Americans with Macedonian Americans, and I myself am a Turkish American of Macedonian heritage. My grandparents were from Skopje, Macedonia. And today, our community, the Turkish American community, wants to learn more about the Macedonian American community. We want to know where are the population concentrations, what are the interests of the Macedonian American community, and so we want to indulge you a little bit with all this and get your experience, your thoughts. You've been doing this for a long time too, representing the Macedonian American community.
Oh, yeah. Well, Günay, I mean, you're one of my first friends in Washington, D.C. when I moved here. And I remember meeting at your office in 2005 in DuPont Circle and just sharing, experiences and our heritage and our parents, our grandparents and their stories and coming to the United States and still preserving, their Macedonian and your Turkish heritage. And so it's been a real pleasure to know you and call you a dear friend. And we got to get you out to Skopje, to Macedonia in the near future once the pandemic is over, because I think you'll really enjoy it and your family will enjoy it. And I'd enjoy it, showcasing Macedonia to you and your family. And so, yeah, it's a pleasure to be on your show and to speak to your audiences. The United Macedonian Diaspora was founded in 2004. One of the main reasons it was founded is to give Macedonians a voice in Washington. There was never a voice beforehand. There were always meetings of delegations coming to Washington and meeting, folks and policymakers, but never a consistent professional persistent, patient, professional voice. And those are kind of like the 3 Ps. And then when you add the 4th P, which is patriotism, you get a great kind of, what we want to do and what our goals are and sort of our vision. Because in order to do this work, and I think this better than most people, you need a lot of persistence and you need a lot of patience and a lot of diplomacy. And people, I think, take that for granted, particularly in Washington, D.C. And sometimes people want to see more aggressive approaches. However, our work takes time, and I can't underscore that enough for your audience, for our joint audience of Macedonians and Turks in America. A lot of our populations, well, first of all, I was telling somebody the other day, apparently there was some Macedonian called Dragan of Ohrid that came over with Christopher Columbus, and that's kind of the first Macedonian that ever came to the United States. But a lot of our community came about 100 years ago. A lot of those around the time of the independence movement of much of the Balkans from the Ottoman Empire, World War I, in between World War I, World War II, and then you had the populations afterwards, and my parents' generation that came in the 70s, early 80s, and then most recently in the last decade or two since independence. And so largest pockets are Michigan, Ohio, New York, New Jersey, Indiana, Illinois, Chicago area, and growing populations in Florida, given our, snowbirds. I really enjoy going down to Florida during these snowbird festivals that the Macedonian community has. And I've met many Turkish Americans in Florida, and given your growing population over there, I know we've worked together on numerous fronts, and, Texas, California, Arizona, and other pockets. So it's very, similar to Turkish American communities, or where a lot of immigrant communities go to in the United States.
Meto, how did you become interested and take charge? Definitely you're a gentleman, you're smart, you're articulate, you're dedicated to the democratic process. This is your homeland, America, the motherland, Macedonia. And so tell us how what got you involved in civil society and helping the Macedonian American community?
Well, first, I'm glad you said the motherland, because once, probably about 20 years ago, I called it the fatherland, and I got a very bad email from a very prominent woman lawyer in Canada who scolded me and sort of said, you must call it the motherland because it was the mothers that kept the children and preserved the heritage and the culture for their children while the men were off to wars, in the last 100 years. So definitely motherland, and I really appreciate the role that women play in our lives, and women have played a big role in my life because my father passed away when I was 16, and so my mother, single mother, and my grandmother really were the ones that continued making sure that I was proud to be Macedonian. But really, my father was the motivating factor because he was a human rights advocate for human rights of Macedonians in Albania, Bulgaria, and Greece. Albania, luckily, we have a lot more human rights, but unfortunately in Greece and Bulgaria, we have zero, or zilch, as I like to use that word. And so it was really him that made me proud in the early years, and told me stories and whatnot. And I remember meeting our Macedonian Orthodox religious leader in Greece when I was like 10, had come to our house in New Jersey, and I was just astonished that somebody like that, a religious leader, would be thrown in jail or ridiculed or stoned and whatnot by Greek populations. And so that really stuck with me, and to this day I've continued that fight. And Washington, it's a great place to network, to build dialogue, to meet many people, and really educate them on the issues that matter to our community. And luckily through this work, I've met wonderful friends like you and many others in the Turkish community. But I will tell you, one of my first Turkish friends was in elementary school, Seda Aktas, who's a lawyer in Florida, and that's sort of my first introduction. And then in DC, coming and having welcome arms from Günay and your family and many other Turks, it's been a joy, and I really look forward to long-term working with the Turkish American community.
Right. You had mentioned the Macedonian minorities in certain Balkan countries, and I don't know if this still is true. Amnesty International had reported that Greece was referring to its Macedonian populations as Slavophone Hellenes, and to its Turkish population as Turcophone Hellenic Muslims. Of course, we all know this is a denial of an entire ethnic and religious group. Where are we with that in Greece?
Well, I'm glad you brought this up. One thing I think your audience and many people should read the report by the UN expert, independent expert on minority issues, Gay McDougall. Previously, she's no longer in that role, but she visited Greece and met with many people of the Turkish and Macedonian and other minorities. And her conclusion was that Greece needs to get over whether there is or is not a Macedonian or Turkish minority or other minorities, but actually work to make sure that these minorities enjoy full and equal human rights and religious freedom rights. And unfortunately, the Turks, you're a little bit more fortunate than us, given the Lausanne Treaty and certain aspects of that. However, with our community, there's no such thing. We can't even register associations as Macedonian associations. We can't have Macedonian language classes. There was initiatives to open up radios or TV programs. All of them failed. And even with, many people thought with the name change that Macedonians in Greece would enjoy a little bit more human rights. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And to this day, the Greek state denies, and the European Court of Human Rights has, found Greece guilty in violation of freedom of assembly and freedom of association for the last, 30 years to the Macedonian community and longer. I mean, it would be great if Greece prided itself on being a multi-ethnic, multi-faith state. I recall there was a movement in the 1920s where there was a publication of a Macedonian language sort of dictionary and abecedar for the Macedonian minority. And, under when Greece had the civil war, Greeks and Macedonians fought side by side, against the monarchists. And it's unfortunate story. I mean, there's been stories of where the monarchists would bring children from the north and bring them to islands to Hellenize them. And you would have situations where these children would go back to their villages and they would not be able to speak to their parents or their family members because they no longer knew Macedonian. And their parents didn't know Greek. And so it's a tragic history. And I'd love for one day for all of us to enjoy equal human rights in Greece.
Right. Can you tell us about the Macedonian people and the language? I think that sometimes falls on deaf ears. There's a country, Macedonia. There's a people, Macedonian. There's a language they speak. What's a little bit history and a little bit culture?
Yeah, well, it seems like sometimes in the Balkans, the right to self-determination is given to everybody but the Macedonians. We're the only ones that have to change our name and our identity and our linguistic affiliation to appease Greece and Bulgaria to get into NATO, EU, and other collaborative, multilateral organizations. And, I recall, Turkey had an asterisk at NATO saying that Turkey recognizes this country as Republic of Macedonia, and 140 countries recognized Macedonia as Macedonia. Unfortunately, the name was changed, and actually it made it worse for many Macedonians because now we're noticing that many media outlets, government entities, even, I noticed yesterday there was an article in the Lithuanian Foreign Ministry where they were meeting with the Macedonian counterpart, and they said we were meeting with the North Macedonian counterpart. So the adjective for our identity became North Macedonian all of a sudden because of this name change, and obviously we're opposed to it. The language, the history sort of, look, I think language is an evolving thing. A lot of our language preservation happened at monasteries in secrecy because we were not allowed to express ourselves in Macedonian, or it wasn't a recognized, even in my research with the U.S. Census Bureau, and we recently had a campaign of getting Macedonians to report their Macedonian heritage. There was a communique out from the U.S. Census Bureau in like 1921, I believe, where it said if you come from this area, here are the only available ethnicities you can put on the form, Macedonian was not on there because they didn't view that as its own. So we've definitely come a long way, even in the United States, where now we definitely can freely express our ethnicity, and in Canada and Australia and many other places. Unfortunately, in the Balkans, we're not. And now, the issue has come to the forefront again because Bulgaria is blocking Macedonia's EU membership over the language and what Bulgaria would like to keep secret from the international community is their role in occupying Macedonia during World War II and sending 98% of the Macedonian Jewish population to Treblinka, to the extermination camps, and also responsible for killing over 20,000 Macedonians during that time. And so, unfortunately, in order for Macedonia to join the EU, now Macedonia would have to change the way their language is in, I guess, at the EU. So instead of being the Macedonian language, they wanted to be the language of the Republic of, that word that I don't like to use, and Macedonia. And then, you also have Macedonia has to change its textbooks. And I think Günay, when somebody else tries to change your history and gets involved in your domestic way of educating people on your history, it becomes a problem. And Bulgaria and Greece are the victors, unfortunately, in this situation. And Macedonia is the underdog. Very David and Goliath situation. But I hope that answers a lot of your question. So.
Definitely. What are some of the programs of priority for the Macedonian American community? But before I get to that, I do want to raise a question on religion. We know that the Turkish community in Greece has serious problems with religious freedom. And I think there is a long, protracted, difficult process of even getting a Turkish mosque in Athens, and it's all chalked up to the democratic process, but basically a democratic process that's denying democratic rights. And so from the Muslim perspective, we find that there is a prejudice, an enduring prejudice that continues. And then we say, if we were Christian, would it be better? There's always a question in the mind of Turks. If we were Christian, would we be treated differently? So my question to you is, Christianity is a very important identity for the Macedonians, Orthodox Christianity. And what is the diversity there? Does Greece have a legitimate claim to say that they are the monopoly on Orthodox Christianity, that they should be ecumenical for the entirety of Orthodox Christianity? And we know that other countries have their own special religious freedom interpretations of their Orthodox Christianity. May that be Macedonia, of course, Serbia, Russia, Armenia. So where do we stand on mutual respect for the Christianity of Macedonians?
Sure. Well, one, I think, there has been aspects under the Ottoman Empire that have not helped the situation when it comes to the Macedonian Orthodox Church. And I think you and I know, as friends, we could talk openly. Unfortunately, the Macedonian Orthodox Archbishopry was abolished in 1767 by a decree by the Sultan. And a lot of that was as a result of lobbying by the Ecumenical Patriarch, or what, the Greeks and Bulgarians and others. And unfortunately, for 200 years, our church could not exist. And then it was resurrected again, largely by communities in the diaspora. And many people in the Orthodox world assert that, well, Macedonia never really existed. It was an archbishopry, but it really fell under the auspices of the controlling churches during the Ottoman Empire, which was the Serbian, Bulgarian, and Greek Orthodox churches, as you know. And so, unfortunately, and during communism, there was not a lot of opposition. But then, when Macedonia became independent, it immediately got opposition from the Greek, Bulgarian, and Serbian, where the Serbian and Bulgarian actually collaborated to open up a different church within Macedonia that would represent the interests of the population, but it would not be Macedonian Orthodox. However, Macedonian Orthodox Church is the successor of the old medieval Ohrid Archbishopry, which later became a patriarchate, which actually had jurisdiction of much of the land in the current Southeast Europe, Balkan Peninsula. Now, the ecumenical patriarch in Istanbul is not recognized by our population as the head of the International Orthodox, because one of the approaches that they've taken, I mean, I recall a statement by the ecumenical patriarch in 2007 in North Greece when he said Macedonia was, is, and always will be Greek. So it's very unfortunate that a religious leader would come out with such a political statement against the Macedonian people, which immediately then says, well, how could I be represented by somebody like that who opposes my own ethnicity? And as you know, much of the Orthodox world is ethno-religious or churches. So the Bulgarian Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox, the Ethiopian Orthodox, so there's many, and it becomes very difficult. So for example, I had a situation where I wanted to bring the bishop, the metropolitan of our diocese, Metropolitan Metodi, which actually we share the same name, who's out of Detroit, to conduct a religious service in Washington, D.C., however, at the Orthodox Church of America. And they denied that request because we're not in sync with the Orthodox world. And so we don't have a different religion. Much of what are the scriptures and everything are all the same. The only differences are probably linguistic and some, different traditions amongst, different villages or towns or whatnot, but largely we're the same faith. The Orthodox world is not like the Roman Catholic Church. We're a very different a way of organizing. And so, UMD is not representative of the Orthodox churches by any means, but we've collaborated because a lot of our Macedonian population member in the Macedonian Orthodox Church, but we have Macedonians who are of different faiths, of Islam, of Judaism, Methodist, and many other religions.
Before COVID, Meto, we used to have Macedonian Christmas get-togethers with the Turkish American community of Washington, D.C., and I hope we can resume that when it's safe health-wise and for the community. But in those get-togethers, Meto, we used to do Macedonian dances, and we decorated the tree, and we lit up the tree at the Turkish House right here in Washington, Turkish House in D.C. And we shared a lot about, you shared a lot, your community members who attended shared a lot about their Macedonian heritage and your Christian heritage, your Macedonian Orthodox heritage. Can you talk to us a little bit about Macedonian-Turkish relations, Macedonian-American maybe visits to Turkey, and the Macedonian community of Turkey?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because one, we've never felt so welcomed at any event like we have with the ones that we did together with you and the Turkish American community. It's been a real joy. I'll tell you, I'll be very frank. I start my day with making Turkish coffee in the cezve, which we call cezve as well. And, you know, it's funny, a lot of the Balkan countries call their coffees different, like Serbian coffee or Greek coffee or whatever. And for some reason, we always say Tursko kafe because we know where it comes from. But I can't go a day without Tursko kafe. And so we have a lot of similarities. There's many words in both languages that resonate. You know, I was talking to a Turkish friend and I was like, yorgan or yastuk. And, you know, those are words that my grandmother used, you know. And so, or when we have, you know, come to the table to eat, we say buyrum, you know, which is a Turkish word. So I think these are what I think draws us so close together is that romanticized, you know, history and the culture and all that over the years and the role that, you know, Ottoman Empire played in the region. You know, coming from a history of, you know, let's be frank, there's been certain aspects of oppression and things like that. However, there has been such a positive development over the last 100 years between Turkish and Macedonian people. I mean, we had a Macedonian, Dimitar Vlahov, who's a member of the Ottoman parliament. Many of the folks that fought in the Young Turk Revolution came from geographic Macedonia. Ataturk, you know, who was born in Solun, you know, which I believe in Turkish it's Salonik, and he was born there. However, his parents came from a village in modern-day Republic of Macedonia by Debar called Kojajik, and the Macedonian government funded a grant through the Ministry of Culture to rebuild the house, turn it into a museum, and it's a nice homage to Ataturk's parents. And Ataturk went to the military school in Bitola, which you call Manastir. And so there's a lot of those historical ties. And I meet Turks all the time, you know, at different events, and they'll say, oh, my heritage is from Macedonia, or I'm from Manastir, or I'm from Salonik, or all that, and like you know, Günay. And so I think there's a really good relationship there. Turkey is one of the first countries to recognize Macedonia's independence, has been an ally with a capital A, not a lowercase a. There's a lot of economic ties between both countries. There's a Turkish Chamber of Commerce in Macedonia. There's large Macedonian populations in Izmir and the sort of Aegean side. You know, I met somebody yesterday at a conference call with a Macedonian Turk from Ottawa, believe it or not, who comes from Macedonia, from Skopje, believe it or not, Günay. And I'm like, I need to link you both together because you have similar backgrounds. But 19, rising star in Canadian global affairs. And I was so pleased, you know, to meet somebody of similar heritage. And so there's constantly, and I think the biggest promoters of the Turkish-Macedonian relationship are the people that come from Macedonia that share that, you know, cultural affiliation. But I think with that, it comes into, you know, why we're so interested in making sure there's a strong U.S.-Turkey, U.S.-Macedonia relationship, and we all work together. You know, a strong Turkey is in the interest of everybody. A weak Turkey is not in the interest of anybody.
Right. No, we would definitely agree. Turkey has the second largest, one of the most competent militaries in NATO and the world. Turkey has experience in real-time conflict as well, because the neighborhood is very difficult. Mm-hmm. You got Iran, Iraq, Syria to start with, and then you have Nakhchivan and Armenia and Western Azerbaijan areas. Thank God, you know, Turkey took an active role in Bosnia to preserve the Bosniak population, the Bosniak culture, the Bosniak heritage, and independence and sovereignty. There are maybe 100,000 Bosnian refugees in Turkey, still slowly integrating back into Bosnia. So Turkey will always take an active role in peace and security, stability in the Balkans. Macedonia is definitely a column of stability. It is, regardless of all the difficulties Macedonia and the people of Macedonia face, the goodwill transcends it all. It's a strong, dedicated, good people, a good country. That's how, and I, my grandparents come from Macedonia, so I am a little bit subjective here. But having been to Turkey hundreds of times, met with so many different leaders at the national, local levels, and the peoples, I sense that there is tremendous trust and admiration toward the people of Macedonia. And I can add other countries too, Kosovo and Albania and Bosnia, of course. And I think even relations with between Turkey and Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, and Greece have great opportunity. I think Turkey will always be there as a bulwark of NATO and of the Western community, but also of the Eastern community. There's something we cannot deny, and that is Turkey is on the crossroads. It is going to be multi-regional, multicultural, and it's going to be a bridge. It cannot be black and white. It is the ultimate gray, and gray is good. I mean, gray, I think, is the future of the world. When we talk about Greece trying to come to terms with its minorities and have a society where you don't have to actually be referred to as a Greek ethnic, but you can be a Turk of Greek citizenship, a Macedonian of Greek citizenship, and be treated equally. That is the future. It cannot be denied. When it was, you had mentioned, somebody said that, I forgot what you said, but an Archbishop of Greece said,
a religious, the ecumenical patriarch in Istanbul had a speech in Florina, what we call Lerin, and he said Macedonia was, is, and always will be Greek. And that's Ecumenical Patriarch Bartolome, who I would love to offer respect to, but when I hear those types of messages, that's not conducive for equality and human rights of my people within Greece.
Yeah, I would agree that was a very wrong thing to say, and it is reminiscent of the Cyprus conflict, where, again, the religious order there said there is no place on this island for people who do not constantly speak, feel, and think Greek. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the biggest weakness in the claim of being ecumenical. And that is, you cannot be so ethnocentric. If we're going to indulge theology and Christianity, or just religion in general, and if we believe in God, I think it transcends ethnocentricity. It's about how we live our lives, the code with which we conduct our days, and I think that's where the Greek Church is failing badly.
I think that you brought up several really important points, and I just, I failed to mention something earlier, and we had this discussion, when the Hagia Sophia, who I've, visited numerous times, was converted into a mosque, and, Justinian the Great, who was the emperor of the Byzantine Empire, who actually comes or originated from Skopje, or Justinia Prima, and the heritage that Macedonians have played over the last 2,000 years within Istanbul, and also, I was looking in my research, the Iron Church in Istanbul called Saint Stefan, who now is under the Bulgarian jurisdiction. A lot of it was built by Macedonian immigrants who went to Istanbul. So I think that there's, again, the shared history. And a lot of the decisions in Turkey also impact Macedonians, and a lot of those decisions in the Balkans impact Turkey. And what I wanted to stress here, and I'm glad that you brought up Bosnia and also mentioned Kosovo, because now there is this, I guess, impetus. I mean, it started in the Trump administration, and now it will continue in the Biden administration, of resolving the Kosovo-Serbia issues and dialogue. And one of the proposals most recently by the International Crisis Group is land swaps as a solution to the problem. We are very opposed to this because we should not have any more border changes and land swaps in the Balkans. Bismarck once famously said that the Balkans, produce more history than anything, and whoever, I guess, whoever controls the Balkans controls the world. And the Balkans are very, as you said, Turkey is a crossroads. The Balkans are definitely a crossroads from Turkey, the Middle East and all that, and Africa to Europe. And so we don't want any more border changes or any sort of land swaps, because that will harm Bosnia, it will harm Macedonia, it will harm other countries in the region, because we don't want, and we need to condemn separatist movements. And I was very pleased, actually, the head of the Islamic community of Macedonia the other day said in a statement, because there was some protests recently in Macedonia by the Albanian minority, and they were chanting Greater Albania during these protests. And I was pleased to note that the head of the Islamic community said that these chants do not help the cause of anybody in the region. And no, we're done with greater, and somebody, I remember saying, well, Antonio Samaras, the former prime minister of Macedonia, of Greece, should negotiate the dialogue between Bulgaria and Macedonia. And I was like, are you out of your mind? This person once said that Macedonia will not exist, and it will be divided between a greater Albania and a greater Bulgaria. And this is the leader of the Greek state at one time. You know what I mean? So those statements do not help anybody, nor the region, nor Turkey, nor the U.S. interests in the region.
I totally agree that the leaders of the world, our leaders in America, have to adopt a different language, a different tone, and also the media. Sometimes I find that the media can actually set the tone and not use productive language. There's sometimes I sense an American exceptionalism being reflected from the media, but on the U.S. government side, whoever the president is saying, God, that was not a good way to describe this problem. That's not a good way to describe what we want out of this or that country. So I think in America, we need to rethink how we choose our words and the tone we set. And my hope is that President Biden will take good action in this direction, and build rather than challenge relationships. It is already a challenging time. There's deep polarizations, not only in our country here in America, but deep polarizations throughout. And whereas there is so much more in common with people than there are differences. So I'm hopeful, Meto, that for the next year or so, we may not see much. I think the Biden administration will take a strategic pause. This is the discussion I am hearing in Washington, D.C. And during that pause, we'll pretty much not leverage, but bring up human rights issues here and there. It will struggle with America's own human rights issues, so as not to look hypocritical, to look like it's consistent with what it's looking for the rest of the world. the Pledge of Allegiance in the United States, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As a Turkish American community, we like that. And we wish it for everyone, and it's people in Turkey as well. It's a great vision and a great mission.
We pledge of allegiance every day in elementary school. It's such an important part of the very fabric of society, and we, all of us together, make America a better country. And what our people bring to the forefront, particularly our hardworking, community or mindset, particularly in opening up small businesses, getting involved in different areas of society. And I think that, where you said, and I think you underscore this, is what we have to work on areas that unite us. And I believe that, culture unites us, dancing unites us, these types of activities. I'm always pleased when the Turkish festival in Washington showcases a Macedonian dance and welcomes a Macedonian folklore group to participate, to showcase our culture, and vice versa, with a Turkish community. I'll tell you, in Toronto, for example, the Turkish Children's Festival always happens at the Macedonian Orthodox Church in Toronto at St. Clement. So, those are areas. But I also think that economic diplomacy is a very critical component. I think the fight against crime, corruption, the rule of law, the democratic processes are ongoing and very evolving. And what America went through is very different to what other countries went through. And I think we need to have an understanding of that, because democracy doesn't happen overnight. It's not built overnight. But I think a key component to ensuring democracy and stability and peace is economic development. And as you know, there are other opposing interests that are coming into the Balkans and filling the void that America and other Western countries. And when you notice the inconsistency of the European Union and how they can't make up their mind on critical issues, and even we're noticing this now with the vaccine problem, and superior countries getting access and others not, and it's becoming a very difficult thing. But economic development, I think, and American economic development, I mean, under the Obama administration, there was a summit called the U.S. Balkans Business Summit. I would love to see that resurrected under the Biden administration. I'd love to see a double taxation treaty between U.S. and Macedonia. I'd love to see American companies looking at Turkey, Macedonia, the Balkans, and others as favorable places for investments, to build those ties. Because when you create jobs, when you create economic diplomacy, economic opportunity and development, you bring peace and stability and a decrease in brain drain, which I think is affecting all of our countries equally.
Meto, you're preaching to the choir, for me at least. We are going to, as soon as we're over this COVID, I think we should definitely work on educational delegations from America to Macedonia, from Macedonia to Turkey, Turkey to Americas, and among the three, now, as well as other countries in the region, of course. Before COVID, first of all, as TASC, I want to commend the American Turkish Association of Washington, D.C., and President Sıtkı Kazancı and his team for the Turkish Festival. That is always voted as the best cultural event of Washington, D.C., and I think why it gets the humanitarian grant and other support is because it is inclusive. And I commend ATADC for including the diversity of Turkey, including its Macedonian heritage. And I think that builds nice bridges between Turkey and countries of the Balkans, particularly Macedonia as we're speaking, and helps solidarity and diversity in America, something we really need to understand and love. So We had an education delegation go from the United States, Maryland state, to Turkey, and interesting things happened. First of all, Catholic University's dean, director said, if there's any country I want my students to go to experience a Muslim country, it's Turkey. You got to see it. They got to feel it. They got to see it. They have to really appreciate it. And they intervened at the State Department to improve the travel advisory, which was putting Turkey at the level of a country at war and famine and disease. And it was a strange classification. Well, now it's normalized. But then COVID came. But during that delegation trip, we looked at different industries. One was cybersecurity. And guess what, Meto? Macedonia, Kosovo, Albania, these countries were looked at as top cybersecurity technology, cybersecurity expertise countries. Mm-hmm. And young populations. I met brain whizzes who were like 22 years old from these countries studying in Turkey. And guess what? Between universities of Maryland, Capital Technology University, and Istanbul Aydın University, we set up a program in cybersecurity education. And that program now reaches out to Macedonia, Kosovo, and Albania. And I think education is another way not only to build bridges between young people, which are our future leaders, but also businesses that think practically about things and realistically about things. And it may be where we can find the proper words, the proper tone to solve problems. I just wanted to share something with you, Meto. It is in 1969, my parents immigrated from Turkey. Their parents immigrated from Skopje to Turkey. My parents immigrated from Izmir to Chicago. And that's where I was born. But in 1969, my dad we moved to San Francisco. My dad's in some record store in San Francisco, and he finds this album of Macedonian folk music. And yeah, I want to share that with you. And here it is. It's from 1969. And there you have two women in their national costumes, probably a village costume too, because you can have great heritage pride going down to the village levels as well. And on the back they explain all the songs. And one of my favorite songs, and you can correct my pronunciation, is Zemlyo Makedonska. Did I say that correctly?
Yes. The land Macedonia.
The land Macedonia. It says a song about the beauties of Macedonia, life and love in the country, and any adversary who dares to disturb the peaceful work and life of Macedonia will be taught a lesson. So I think where there's great pride in that song, those words in the description, and there's a great dedication to the future of Macedonia. This is from 1969, what I just read to you, I think it's getting better by the day, and people like you, Meto, make it happen. And from the Turkish American community and a community leader, co-chair of TASC, I want to thank you for all your good work, your good spirit. We will resume Macedonian Christmas night at the Turkish House in Washington, D.C. soon as COVID is over. We will continue with showcasing the Macedonian heritage at the Turkish Festival in Washington, D.C. There is so much good work to do. I think between the Turkish American Macedonian communities, we can help broader communities come together and address our issues in a peaceful, productive way, and in ways that transcend things that divide people. And I think religion has a good role it can do in this. Civil society definitely has a good role it can play in this. Meto, any ideas for collaboration?
Well, first, thank you so much for showing that record. Because I danced in folklore. I'm a lover of Macedonian music. I played the clarinet and flute when I was in elementary and high school. And Vaska Ilieva, who's the singer on that record, was actually my late father's favorite singer, and actually one of my fondest memories of attending a concert of hers at the Polish People's Home in New Jersey, in Passaic, New Jersey. And so I think, again, culture, music, all this unites us. And I'm really glad you brought up that relationship for the cybersecurity and IT, because Macedonia I've always viewed as sort of a Silicon Valley of Southeast Europe. I think it's a great location for outsourcing, and many American IT companies are looking at Macedonia, and I know Turkish businesses as well. And so I'm glad of that relationship, and particularly supporting young people and the startup community. And we actually have a mentorship program for the startup community in Macedonia and young entrepreneurs, because the future in the young people. Günay, if you and I continue running these organizations for another decade, I think there's no development, and we didn't accomplish anything. What we accomplish is who we leave these organizations to in the future. And I think the future is in the youth, and I'm very optimistic in what they're going to bring to the table, because they're not burdened with many of the problems that we've seen over the years, and our parents and our grandparents' generation.
I agree. We will fail if we do not raise the youth to take a productive transfer of power and represent their communities and American interests and the interests of their motherlands in a more productive way. I am hopeful. For example, I'll give you an example, Meto. At least in the Turkish American community, Turkish American National Steering Committee, the staff we have for TASCTV, about 20 people, the staff we have for our public advocacy and our charitable work, which includes, for example, we gave food to 40,000 families in the New York, New Jersey region during COVID. We donated hundreds of thousands of masks and tens of thousands of surgical suits to frontline workers against the COVID danger. All of our staff, the average age is about 25. All of our volunteers, less than 25. And they are from all walks of life, all lifestyles. Thank God. I mean, what we got is a really good group of young people coming up. And you know what they're telling me and other people around my age is that they're ready. And they're going to do a great job. They're going to do a great job. We just trust them and set them free. And in their freedom, they're going to do great work. And so I think that's the direction, at least in the Turkish American community, we are taking. And with Macedonian American young people, our young people will do great work. I think they'll think more clearly. I think they'll be more productive. They will not carry some of the things that you and I have, which is sourced from pain sometimes. And I think they'll do good work.
Yeah. So I commend you. I commend you on those humanitarian initiatives. Giving back to society is so important, and I think instilling that in the younger generation is critical, and that's what we've tried to do with our Generation M, which is a young leaders program, and our Birthright Macedonia. Actually, our Birthright Macedonia, who's been going on for 5 years now, brings students of Macedonian heritage over to Macedonia, and they intern in Macedonian institutions, learn about the culture, their roots, but also give back. We actually had an art session for orphans, and we gave back to orphanages in Macedonia. And so I think those are very important values and that our parents instilled in us, and giving back to society. And I commend you for doing that.
Thank you. We have similarly, and we would like to invite the Macedonian youth to this program. It's called Youth Bridges.
Okay.
And before COVID again, we brought 60 Turkish American youth and their non-Turkish friends to Turkey twice in the summer of 2019. And we would like to expand that to the youth of the Macedonian American community. And maybe we can do a trilateral visit, bring the Turkish Americans from Turkey after visiting Turkey to Macedonia, back to Istanbul, back to America. Then we have a reconvening here. And then those kids say to us, all right, Mr. Meto, Mr. Günay, we're set to go. Please trust us.
I wouldn't be, I guess I can't miss the opportunity on your show to mention our relationship with the Turkish Coalition of America over the years, and sharing a joint office with them for the past 10 years, was a joy, and we all worked together. And that's when many opportunities that you and I interacted. And I recall there was, congressional delegations that we do, between the United States and Turkey and Macedonia, and we would visit the parliament in Ankara and also in Macedonia and meet with officials. And I think we need to keep those I guess bridge building, as you call them, opportunities, and not just on a high level, but trickle down to civil society, education, youth, business, is so critical to the relationship, and as I said, to peace and stability.
Meto, thank you for mentioning Turkish Coalition of America. They are critical to the effort of Turkish American empowerment in American democratic, economic, social, and cultural life. The owners, the Ayaslı family, Yalçın, Serpil Ayaslı, are also Macedonian.
They also have roots from Bitola Manastir, and we actually went to Macedonia with them, and it was a joy.
So they're very dedicated. Oh, sorry about that. That was my wife calling me.
I think it's time to go, Günay.
Well, I wanted to thank again also Lincoln McCurdy, who headed the program at Turkish Coalition America. Definitely, it was all about coalition building, and it will continue. The office during COVID, we're focused in Massachusetts now, operating from Massachusetts, and it reaches throughout the country. Great family, great vision and mission. We thank the Ayaslı family.
Well, some of my best friends I've met through all of you, and so I'm so proud to call you my friend, and many members of the Turkish community.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Meto. I will call you bro.
we say in Macedonian bračko.
Okay, bračko. My warmest regards to you, your community. God bless.
Likewise. Thank you, Günay.
Thank you, Meto.